Hey guys, it looks like Asian Boss is doing another video in Taiwan. I mean, I believe they were planning on making their second or their next video in Taiwan. They were scouting for people to interview on Facebook in December for the one after the one that they did on what the Taiwanese people think of China. But I think that after I don't know if Asian Boss saw my video, but there was criticism that they faced on Twitter, I guess maybe on Reddit as well. And I think what we were thinking was that they don't want to face criticism again, so they decided to not do the next video in Taiwan. I don't know if that's the case, but that's what we were thinking. And some of us were like, well, maybe we shouldn't have tagged them so that they didn't feel bad. I don't know. And leading to them not ever wanting to do another video in Taiwan again. For context, they make it seem like they're just going out on the street and interviewing people to see what people think. But we found out that they actually, at least for the video that they did on Taiwan, their last video in Taiwan, that they purposely looked for people that had a certain perspective, and they didn't look for somebody that had the equivalent opposing view. They only searched for certain views that were more leaning on one side. But anyway, I'm not sure if with this one they're truly going out on the street and interviewing people organically, or if they posted on Facebook or whatever forum to look for specific views that they're looking for, or only put in specific views in the final edit. I don't know. We'll see. Let's take a look.
Hey everybody, Steven from Asian Boss. As part of our mission to bridge social and cultural gaps between Asia and the West, we try our best to bring the most authentic local voices from Asia, because we believe it's always best if you hear directly from the people. We recently conducted a street interview in Taiwan to ask the locals about what they thought of China, and so many of you reached out thanking us for providing some much needed insight. You also asked if we can conduct another street interview in Taiwan to ask people about what they thought of the United States, and we listened.
So they're really framing it as like we just did a good job, which some of us, and I don't actually know, like I stopped watching their videos quite a while ago, and some people have like written to me about how they have also felt like Asian Boss has a bit of a slant. And I had always been speculating that, so they've done dozens and dozens and dozens of videos of, what the Chinese people think, right? So I guess they would have had a contact in China to manage the logistics going on the street, and, maybe like have a producer for all their China videos. And if that person is on their team, which I'm guessing, they would have like a WhatsApp group or a Discord or whatever group that they, talk, that they might very subtly convince them, you don't really need to do a video of Taiwan because, they're a part of us. I don't know. That's what it seemed like. I'm just wondering if they're pretending that they didn't see all the criticisms that they had from their last video. Another, criticism that they received was, that they only did interviews in, I guess it was Taipei, and people were talking about how Taipei generally might skew one way and they would have gotten different results if they went to different cities. But I think that they only do one city for their other videos in other countries. I'd like to see them interview some Aboriginal Taiwanese people, because there's like over a dozen tribes in Taiwan. But
Leave the streets of Taipei. Be sure to subscribe to Asian Boss and hit that notification bell. The street interview you're about to watch was actually filmed right before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and we're in the process of filming another follow-up street interview in Taiwan to get the locals' reactions as we speak. So stay tuned and don't miss out. Now let's go to our Asian Boss reporter in Taipei for more.
想了解一下台湾人对美国的了解有多少？那台湾的媒体有多少关于美国的报道呢？
she kind of has like a mainland Chinese accent. I might be wrong, but I don't know. As you guys probably know, that I am like a little understandably sensitive about the subject, but
那台湾媒体报道大部分都是报道美国如何帮助台湾，如何加入世界组织，然后如何抵抗中国，大部分都是这个角度去切入的。所以说台湾的了解就是美国如何帮助台湾跟中国对抗。
那从台湾的媒体的话，这就要看你是看哪一家的新闻媒体，它可能是不同政党的媒体，那它可能就会从不同的 perspective 去出发。那你如果再是从 YouTube 上面看的话，当然也是会有不同的 perspective。可是我觉得就是如果要对于美国的现况有一个充分的了解的话，在台湾单看某一台、单看某一个 YouTube channel 是不够的，你要综合来看同一件事情，你可能需要看到不同3到4个 perspective， 你才有办法对它有大概60-70%的一个。
I would agree with this.
对于2022年的美国，它作为一个国家有什么样的印象？比如当你想到美国的时候，首先您会想到什么
？2022年的美国嘛，我可能比较会想到的是一些电影，对吧？所以我其实对他们印象就还好，这样。真的要讲，其实他们是个大国嘛，国力很强啊，科技或什么很多都是非常强的。可是当然他们也一定有他们自己国家的许多问题啊。
我是觉得他们可能虽然历史它发展没有那么久，但是个人主义还是蛮强的。可能对于疫情的这种态度，就是跟我们亚洲完全就是不一样。
It's interesting that he said, if you look at it, they haven't been around that long, but they've been around longer than the Republic of China, the People's Republic of China, the Republic of China in 1911, the People's Republic of China in 1949. And, some people in Taiwan want to end the Republic of China in Taiwan and start a Republic of Taiwan, and that would be even newer, obviously. So it's interesting that he says that they haven't been around. I mean, compared to obviously like European countries, sure, but I think there's even some European countries that started a new country, like with a new name, new constitution and whatnot. Yeah, I don't quite understand. I mean, Canada has been around even less amount of time than the United States, so I don't quite understand when people say that the United States hasn't been around that long. It really depends on what other countries you're thinking of to compare it with, but to hear it from a Taiwanese person's perspective, it's interesting.
主义还是蛮强的，可能对于疫情的这种态度，就是跟我们亚洲完全就是不一样。虽然我觉得也不能说他们比如说比较少戴口罩或者什么，就是一种错，或者大家会觉得说，那是因为我觉得他们从小跟我们的思维就不一样，他们强调比较个人自由啊这种，所以我会先想到这个了。
想到美国的话，现在就是他对中国跟台湾的关系比较，就是他不会让中国过度的一昧的一直发展出去，他会利用，可是对于台湾他又倾向又不会让踩到中国底线的那个的角度，的态度。
他美国强调他国力很强，可是他种族很乱，他民乱好像越来越，国内好像越来越乱。
That is kind of true. It's very divided, and every once in a while somebody might bring up, oh, there might be a civil war coming in the United States. I feel like that might be a self-fulfilling prophecy though. Like the more you talk about a civil war, the more it's likely to happen. So maybe we shouldn't. I mean, adversarial countries will want to stoke division in adversarial countries. It's tough because the president doesn't really control the entire country. Like people talk about how like what a president can actually do, the powers that are afforded to the president, like they can only do so much.
I'm glad that the framers of the Constitution saw fit to ensure that the president was someone who was captain of a large ship with a small rudder. There's a limit to how much harm any given president. Being a US president is like being captain of a large ship with a small rudder, and so there's just a limit to how much good or bad a president can actually do. I mean, obviously, if a president could make the economy great and there was like a button they could press, they'd be pressing that button at the speed of light. But they can't. So they can't just magically make the economy good. No president wants the economy bad ever. There's just a limit to how much they can do.
It's not like a top-down, obviously, not like it's not an autocracy. And you have like half of the country hating Biden too. So
拜登政府没有办法控制他整个国内。那如果说以这样的角度来讲的话，台湾要期待美国能够主导世界秩序，好像有点难度，因为他内才能攘外嘛，他自己国家。
Yeah, that's the problem with. Maybe I shouldn't say that's the problem, but I don't know. It's a characteristic of a democracy that allows like dissenting views. You're not going to be as unified. And that's the case with Taiwan too. Like they used to have a one-party dictatorship. I believe during the Cold War era, communist books were banned. Dissenting views, people were executed and jailed. It was martial law, the longest period of martial law in the world, only to be surpassed by Syria. But now, Taiwan's like the most democratic country in Asia. Taiwan, with its, the small island of Taiwan, with its only 23, almost 24 million people, are more divided, I think. I think this might be a simplification, but the Taiwanese amongst themselves might be more divided than the Chinese, the mainland Chinese, because they have like, state media and, they control what they remove from the internet and things like that. So it's more, and there's only one party, so it's like, oh, like if you insult our party, you're insulting our country because we only have one party. So it's like it's much more unified that way. That's sort of just what comes with a country with multiple parties. So I don't know what to say about that.
他都处理不好的，外部的话也是紧着说找他最有利益的，他去经营。那只要他对他没有利益的，他搞不好他就不会去做。台湾的我看新闻媒体的感觉是这样，那觉得说，奇怪，美国不是世界民主大国吗？怎么自己的国内搞成这？
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he's thinking specifically, but my dad, for example, always says, he says something like this too, like, isn't the United States always showing off that they are so democratic? And in Chinese, democracy, 民主, it's two words, right? The first word is the people, and the second word is like the focus or the priority or coming from. And so that gets sort of, when you read those two words in Chinese, it gives you the impression that you're supposed to make your people the priority. But that's not really what democracy means or is when we're talking about it in English. In English, we just mean democracy is a country where you get to vote in, right? That like your people have a voice, that it's not necessarily an indication that the country prioritizes the people or anything like that.
这个样子，那也会让城市说。
So he says, isn't the US a democratic big shot? How can their country end up like that? It's because they allow differing views that, like I said, it comes with the territory. That's what comes with a country that has multiple parties and allows like dissenting views. Like you're gonna have a divided country. That's sort of just how it is. I think what he's saying, and I obviously don't know this person, I think what he's saying is also similar to what comments I've heard my dad make. Is it sort of sounds like he's saying that if you guys are the democratic big shot, that you guys should have your shit together, but that's just not the case. It's not. That's not what it is.
不是世界民主大国嘛，怎么自己的国内搞成这个样子？那也会让城市说，如果完全依靠美国它的意识来走的话，台湾会不会会有更好的发展啊？有时候也会蛮担心的，因为美国毕竟它是一个以自己利益为主导的一个国家，台湾只是它一个棋子而已。对，只要对它有利，它会做；如果对它不利的话，像当初中美建交，台湾就是被美国牺牲啊。
Oh yeah. This is sort of what comes with being a pawn. Like if you really are just a pawn. I remember reading an article suggesting that why doesn't the United States just give up protecting Taiwan, defending Taiwan, and say if China wants to invade, we won't do anything. In exchange, China alleviates all of the American debt that China owns. So it's like which kind of goes to what this guy is saying. Like if one day the United States is in such a decline and China is just like stronger economically than the United States, and the United States is just desperate and has to give concessions and sell things in order to survive, might one of those things be Taiwan? So that is a concern that we can have, that like if the United States gets to a point where they're just in a horrible place, they're desperate, they just say we won't defend Taiwan if you guys decide to invade. I should note that I later learned that China doesn't actually own that much of US debt. I think Japan is number one the last I checked. So I don't think that debt problem is that big of a problem. But yeah, I mean that is something to keep in mind. Like we'd like to think that America, right, beacon of democracy, we will defend democracies because we want more countries to be democratic. So if a democratic country gets threatened, we will be there for them. Not how the world, that's like that you could call that idealistic, way too naive and idealistic, right? And obviously people will be pointing to Ukraine. I'll link down to another article talking about how the similarities and differences between Ukraine and Taiwan, and what United States, to put it harshly, and strategically, and this is so cold and harsh because we should treat all lives equally, right? But Taiwan is more strategically important to Taiwan than Ukraine is, and that's why people are saying that the United States wouldn't respond the same way that they have been responding to with Ukraine. I'll link an article down below and you guys can read about it.
总体而言，您认为在台湾对美国的看法主要是正面的还是负面的？
还是比较正面居多啦，对，因为美国人真的，因为我们两个都在美国念过书，所以我们在那边当地的生活是，他们比较 open minded， 很多事情是他们不会太坚持自己的意见，他们会用沟通的看法，然后就是大家取得平衡，所以跟某大国比较不太一样。
Wait, hold on, let me see that translation. It's a bit different from other. So Asian Boss also has a problem with translation, and it's not just for one video. It's like it happens quite often. It might be a hard job. I don't know. Like I don't want to get too harsh on them. I'm just saying. What she said, it's different from a certain big country. She didn't say it's different from other big powers. She said she was being passively and subtly specific.
我觉得正面是因为说可能就是敌人的敌人就是朋友。那如果说我们跟中国的关系比较像是就是没有那么一致性的话，然后美国常扮演可能就是那种世界老大哥的角色，在教训反制台湾。那我觉得，所以我们对美国的关系会看待比较正面。
台湾一般来讲正面比较多啦，至少在说中国在国际打压台湾的时候，杀台湾的邦交国，然后扯台湾的后腿，至少我们还有一个美国老大，美国可以依靠。只是说台湾的声音很小，那在国际上也发不了什么事。
It would be great if there was an apolitical institution, organization that equally, by no double standards, every country by the same standard, just spoke in favor of democratic values and against autocracy, regardless of politics. I don't know. I don't want to use the word legitimate, because what is legitimate? But like, maybe it's size, maybe it's influence that makes it count. Like a big institution or organization that educates people and speaks in favor of and speaks for democratic countries or, democratic values, without the influence of money and politics. That would help small countries like Taiwan not be overlooked and not be oppressed by bigger influence like China. Like how Gap wanted to sell a t-shirt in China that had the map of China but didn't include Taiwan. That has an impact. Like, that has an influence. Like, when you force big businesses to go along and enforce your fiction, your narrative that Taiwan is a part of you guys, that has an impact. That influences people's thinking, especially the people that aren't informed on this particular subject, which is most people on Earth. Because if you're not Taiwanese, if you're not Chinese, why would you care about this issue?
声音，那没有美国的支持，台湾人真的走不出去。对，那就像现在目前一些台商回流，然后晶圆代工，台湾的科技也需要美国支持。如果美国没有支持的话，台湾的经济产业可能也是很危险。
那您认为美国对台湾人民的意义是？
美国对台湾人民的意义好像就是小孩有一个依靠的爸爸一样。
That's so funny, because I hear that, there's a common crisis of unreliable fathers in the United States. So for him to say that relationship is sort of like a child with a reliable father, that doesn't inspire hope. And I don't know if there's, Americans watching this, like that's a thing, right? There's sort of like this trope that in America, there's a lot of unreliable fathers. And, it's not just America, it's like countries all over, but it's countries all over the world, sure. But like, I've heard that that's also a thing, maybe in particular in the United States, I don't know. So for him to say that, that's like, I don't know if that'd be, anyway.
小孩一个有一个依靠的爸爸一样，因为这个小孩在国际上好像是一个孤儿。
Which is, again, yeah, it sucks that the UN is not this apolitical entity. When certain countries get to have seats and positions that are supposed to mean something, like human rights or, certain important international global human interests, and that gets infected with politics and money, that kind of perverts the purpose of the institution in the first place. There should be this international institution or organization that treats all countries with the same standard. No country gets to silence another country. Countries should be, all countries that are, effective countries should be included in the United Nations. And by the way, the Republic of China, which is the government that governs Taiwan and not China today, was a founding member of the United Nations. I kind of talked about like the history of, the UN and the countries of the world having to choose one China because of the idea that I don't agree with, that there can only be one China, so they had to choose one and kick the other one out. Yeah, you can check the other video where I talk about that. But yeah, I think all countries should be in the United Nations, and no country gets to silence another country. And so that way, minority countries in the world don't get overlooked. And yeah, all countries deserve to, have the same dignity.
那有一个强壮的爸爸可以立你，那可是他这个爸爸要你做什么你也得做，不然的话他如果不理你的话你就没有出路了。
我觉得有点像是互利共生的关系就是也不会说亲你或不亲你，而是现在这个感觉就是需要他，就像是刚好你看到一个路人，然后他需要你帮助，然后刚好可以帮到你，那你就互相帮忙这样。
比较相对来说比较友善，然后对比较有军事上的保护保障。
那你觉得这样子的关系的基础是建立在什么之上？是为什么？
建立在中国位置之上。然后我觉得是台湾的位置是一个。就是对于他们来说，对于美国或者甚至日本来说，他们的封锁一个中国非常重要的一个军事战略位置。
So somebody pointed out to me that if China, the PRC, People's Republic of China, were to have taken Taiwan, that they would have direct access to the Pacific Ocean, and I suppose they would have greater control over the Taiwan Strait, which a lot of international trade goes through there. And having direct access to the Pacific Ocean means it leaves Hawaii and the western coast of Canada and the United States more vulnerable. But if you have a sovereign country like Taiwan in that position, that kind of keeps more countries there, I guess, in check, because every country has their own territory and you just can't cross that boundary, so to speak. So yeah.
我觉得比较倾向于盟友间军事保护这一块，因为长久以来他们对于中国的态度就是比较采。
Yeah, you can't say it's since forever. I mean, it wasn't that case when the Republic of China was in China. It'd be interesting, and I'll leave it to the comments to ask everybody, when has the US actually been in opposition with China? I mean, they decided to switch official diplomatic relations with the ROC, Republic of China in Taiwan, to the PRC, the People's Republic of China in China. They did that to take advantage of the fact that communist China was having issues with communist Russia, and communist Russia was enemy number one for the United States, so they took advantage of their beef and they wanted to be able to corner the USSR. Does that mean that the United States was in opposition with China at the time? No, they were trying to work together, right? And the US shipping a lot of their manufacturing and jobs to China, is that opposition? So define that opposition, and when do you think it started?
对立嘛，那自然而然，所以当中国想要越往外面扩展发展的话，那势必就会影响到台湾这边。那他为了不让他们过度的扩展，所以他有事实的必要给予台湾一些协助，不要让他们发展这么的扩大。
那您认为美国保护台湾能得到什么好处？
我觉得首先首当其冲的就是他今天是
We don't know how long that's gonna be, how long that's still going to be the case for US to still be number one. Let me know what you guys think. How long do you think it's going to take for the US not to be number one anymore?
世界第一，那现在中国有世界第二的趋势。
When is that gonna be? I'm just curious, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
那他在怎么讲呢？就是保持台湾海峡台湾的独立，台湾独立运作的这样子的一个状态。首先第一个是台湾的战略位置，台湾海峡。那第二个的话呢，就是说难听一点啦，就是中国越乱越没有办法专心的去成为第一。那当然就是这个就是保护美国的利益嘛，这样子。
其实我不觉得能得到什么好处对吧？
那您认为有没有可能
What? How can you say that? How can you say that there's no benefits for the US? I mean, having the most advanced semiconductor chips come from a country that is heavily reliant on you is an absolute benefit, right? I mean, that's just one out of others. You know, keeping China in check is the other. So I don't know what this young man is thinking.
那您认为有没有可能美国它最终是没有保护台湾的？
有可能。因为除了中国大陆那边的原因以外，其实我觉得对台湾来说，其实现在地理位置不是一个很重要的，对，也不是一个很重要的一个因素。因为其实现在科技发达了，其实你要到哪里，或者是你要做什么，其实飞机都可以直接进去，不需要一定要台湾的这个位置。
Interesting.
就是台湾的目前半导体产业，我觉得因应这个情况，第一个他们是需要在这上面有优势的，科技上或经济上面是要有优势的。如果是在国际的竞争形势下，所以我觉得现在情况他们是，我会觉得他们是会是不得不保护台湾的情况。对，因为就是像刚刚讲的，因为不保护台湾对他们来说坏处是非常大的。
那么您对于
I never know how certain people can be about the United States defending Taiwan. I don't know. Why don't you guys let me know your percentage? Like what out of 100, what percentage of you, like what percentage would you give on how certain you are that the United States would do something to defend Taiwan? I don't know. I don't know.
对，因为就是像刚刚讲的，因为不保护台湾对他们来说坏处是非常大的。
那么您对于现任的美国总统 Joe Biden 的印象如何？
他上任的时候，我认为，因为当初他在跟川普选的时候，媒体是说他比较偏亲中派，就是以之前的报道讲，以前他的立场嘛，我觉得他好像他以前忘记他的职位是什么，好像跟中国那边有什么关系的。对，所以普遍认为他是比较属于亲中派。
我对他的印象其实说真的不好不坏啦，讲就比较偏激一点。我觉得美国大选其实有点像是在选一个比较没有那么不好的。
那您认为他在
I don't know why she was smiling like that. Okay.
舞台上的表现好吗？
目前收到的讯息不怎么好。
From what I've seen, people think that he's doing okay, like what people would expect of the United States, I think.
不怎么好。
So I don't know in what way he's seeing that it's not so great.
因为受到批评蛮多的。对，国际社会对他的批评。
That might also be because more people are using the internet now, so you're gonna see a lot more criticism. That might be a reason. I don't know. And I'm not like I didn't support Biden in the. I mean, in the primaries, I was, do I expose myself? I was, I supported. You know what? I'll let you guys guess. What you guys feel free to guess in the comments who I supported in the primaries.
蛮多的。对国际社会对他的批判蛮多的。以中国对美国的表现来讲，如果川普在的时候，中国不会这么样的，好像很嚣张，在国际上到处去展现他的武力。
That's interesting. I mean, yeah, Trump likes to say, and I don't know how true this is, like, oh, if I was still in office, Putin never would have invaded Ukraine. And I'd honestly like to know what you guys think in the comments. Like, do you guys think that Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Trump was in office? I don't know. Because people say, people like Bill Maher love to say that, oh, Trump is so affectionate towards Putin. But if that's the case, why didn't Putin invade Ukraine while Trump was in office? And Trump does give off, the impression that he likes to be, the big guy, the big dog, right? And so there might be some validity to this comment. China wouldn't make a show of their military power if Trump was in office, because Trump would have been like, hey, I'm the big guy. You don't do that. I will say though, when Trump, I believe it was in the UN, criticized Germany for being so dependent on Russian oil, I think he was basically saying something like, you don't want to depend on a country that doesn't share democratic values. And
reliance on a single foreign supplier can leave a nation vulnerable to extortion and intimidation. That is why we congratulate European states such as Poland for leading the construction of a Baltic pipeline so that nations are not dependent on Russia to meet their energy needs. Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers.
And I believe the Germans were like smirking and laughing. Not smirking and laughing now, are you, Germany? I mean.
可是拜登上台的时候，中国就到处炫耀他的武力。
部分人认为台湾应该就是要跟中国更密切的合作，就是比起跟美国，因为台湾是中国的一部分。您
Why would you? Why? I love how like she's like. Why? Okay, even if you wanted to ask this question, unless you're saying that the only people who think that Taiwan should be working more closely with China are the people who believe that Taiwan is a part of China, there are people who might argue that Taiwan should be working more closely with China that are aware that Taiwan isn't a part of the People's Republic of China. So, I don't know, she didn't really have to include that. There are arguments in favor of Taiwan working more closely with China, independent of the idea that Taiwan should be a part of the PRC. Those aren't the only people that make this argument, is what I'm saying.
的合作就是比起跟美国，因为台湾是中国的一部分。您对这样的主张有什么回应吗？
这么敏感哦。我觉得要看哪一种合作方式，如果或是政治或者什么的话，我觉得我就比较不方便表态，只是说如果是经济上面的话，可以看看这样的合作方式。
Yeah, and I talked about this in my last video about how China, the PRC, uses economic weaponry to hurt Taiwan when Taiwan says or does something that they don't like, when they say or do something that offends their feelings. So, and I believe that is a huge reason why you had the 2014 sunflower movement, and I welcome people to read all about it. If you are dependent economically, and economics is very important to the country, right? It's people's livelihoods, right? If you are very dependent economically on a country that is autocratic, does not share your values and principles, and is willing to and has proven to hurt you economically simply because you have a political disagreement that has been proven to be a recipe for disaster. So I talked a little bit about it in my last video, so you can check it out.
经济上面的话，可以看看这样的合作方式。
台湾从来都不是中国的一部分。
And so I wonder if she asked the same question to these two verbatim. It seems like it. They are talking about the PRC when they talk about China. You can talk about whether Taiwan has ever been a part of the ROC, the Republic of China, or the Qing dynasty. And there's like that Ming loyalist pirate, but he never really made Taiwan a part of the mainland because the Ming dynasty was already over by then. You could read about the half Japanese, half Chinese pirate. His name is Koxinga, something like that. Koxinga. Zhen Cenzong is his Chinese name, but his Hokkien name is Koxinga. Koxinga, I think that's how you say it. But she is referring to the People's Republic of China. Reminder, Taiwan has never been a part of the People's Republic of China in any century, decade, year, month, week, day, hour, minute, or second in history. It's never happened before.
我从来不认为它是中国的一部分，应该是中国是台湾的一部分。
If we look at it politically, yeah. Even my dad says this, and it's so weird. I don't understand why people say it like this, that China, even my dad has said, it's not that Taiwan is a part of China, China being the PRC, it's that China is a part of Taiwan. But that just confuses everybody. What these people mean, and like my dad means, is that China should be, and it was, a part of the Republic of China. But when you say that China is a part of Taiwan, not Taiwan is a part of China, because that sounds like it would be the same thing. If A is a part of B, then B is a part of A, right? But even my dad, like, and her says, China is a part of Taiwan, but Taiwan isn't a part of China. That doesn't make sense to people that don't understand the issue. They should say that China should be a part of the Republic of China, as Taiwan is currently, but Taiwan is currently not a part of the People's Republic of China and never has been. I hope that clarifies things for you, because I really genuinely hope that that makes sense to you.
以政治来讲，因为本来国民党就是清朝灭亡是先
After the Qing dynasty was the Nationalist Party, and then
有国民党才有中国共产党，它就像是
Afghanistan was like that. There was a non-government faction. Yeah, the Communist Party of China, and this really pisses me off that people don't know this. The Chinese communists hid while the nationalists, as she is talking about here, was defending China. They hid. And I talk about it with a Chinese person who's born in mainland China. We talk about this. We did like a nearly 3 hour podcast episode about Chinese history. The communists hid while the nationalists defended China against the Japanese when the Japanese were invading and killing and raping millions of Chinese people. As the nationalists, if you imagine this as China and Japan's over here coming in, the nationalists would kick them out to one place and go after them and keep going after them and keep trying to fight the Japanese off. And the communists would come in from behind them and steal supplies and equipment and ammunition. And while the nationalists were having their men killed, taking the brunt of the Japanese invasion, the communists were recruiting anybody who wasn't fighting, recruiting peasants, conscripting people, gathering supplies. And so by the end of World War II, the Sino-Japanese War, the nationalists were bankrupt and weak, and a lot of their men were killed. And the communists by then had recruited a bunch of people during the war, and that's how they destroyed the nationalists and kicked them out to Taiwan. And when Japan asked Mao and the communists about reparations, Mao said, reparations? We haven't even thanked you yet. If you guys didn't do what you did, killing and raping millions of Chinese people, we wouldn't have been able to overtake the nationalists. I just wish more people were aware of that. They'll obviously never teach that in China today because they don't want people to be aware of that. I just hope that more people are aware of it everywhere else and within China. Like, I just hope everybody is more aware of that. It's just, yeah. And then, of course, the communists proceeded to disrespect and destroy Chinese culture, burning ancient Chinese books, scrolls that we'll never get back from ancient China. Priceless artifacts and books and scrolls. Who knows what was written inside? And I, as a Chinese person of Chinese descent, those things are priceless. Things that we would have been able to study, admire, appreciate from ancient China, just, destroyed. Killing the best of China, the best and brightest of China, killing Chinese intellectuals and scholars. That is why there are millions of Chinese people outside of China, and maybe secretly in China, that don't recognize the Communist Party of China or the People's Republic of China as China. Also why some people in Hong Kong wish that they would have been returned to the Republic of China and not the People's Republic of China when Britain gave Hong Kong back to China. And that is why some people in Hong Kong celebrate the National Day of the Republic of China on October 10th. So
香港只有一条路，香港变成中华民国特区，民主自治特区。不管你台湾政府承认不承认我承认的就是1911年以后的中华民国，因为晚清把我割让给英国，晚清又把中国交给了中华民国，我现在就是中华民国的一份子。
灭亡是先有国民党才有中国共产党，它就像是阿富汗一样嘛，它是一个非政府军的，所以我对这件事情一直都觉得是一个莫名其妙的议题。对，如果是中国或美国选一个的话，是中国还是美国？我选我自己耶，其实是台湾。对，你说
That's a good answer. That's good. To be frank, if I really have to choose, it's because our values are more in line. Yeah, exactly. And here's the other thing. Choosing China and choosing the US is not the same thing. One wants to swallow you. One wants to invade and annex you and take you over and manage you. They're gonna just look at Hong Kong. The agreement when Britain gave Hong Kong back to China was that China would not change their political systems for 50 years. They would let it be run as it is for 50 years. They violated that agreement. So when you say choose China, one wants to do that to Taiwan. The other, the United States doesn't want to annex Taiwan and make Taiwan a 51st state of America. That's not what they want. That's not what they want. They don't want to influence our laws in Taiwan. They don't care. It's a consensual relationship where we trade. It's sort of like this. Let's say I'm Taiwan, right? The genders don't really matter, but let's say I'm a Taiwanese girl, right? And then there's a Chinese guy and there's a white American guy. And the Chinese guy is racially more similar with the Taiwanese girl. And so people say, well, why don't you choose the Chinese guy? You're racially similar. One wants to own you and treat you not as an equal. The other wants to have a consensual relationship. It would be like if the Taiwanese girl was genuinely had more in common with the white American guy, but the Chinese Chinese guy is jealous and wants to force the Taiwanese girl to be with him, but the Taiwanese girl doesn't want to. She just genuinely has more in common with the white American guy and wants to have a consensual relationship with the white American guy, but doesn't want to with the Chinese guy because he is abusive. The race should not matter. People who fight against racism, being against racism, it's like Martin Luther King. Like it shouldn't matter what the color of your skin is. It's about what's on the inside. It's about the content of your character. That really is the issue here.
真的要选的话，其实是因为我们价值观比较接近，或者说我们跟美国的价值观比较接近。是。
我认为是应该要倾向与美国合作会比较，但是其实中国也是一个非常大的一个经济体系。那我认为在就是对彼此都有利的条件下，其实不要完全把中国切割，因为这是对。
And I believe Taiwan currently is it safe to say pretty dependent on China economically? I think that is true now. So it's like we definitely are not and have not cut China out, because I believe currently, if you look at trading partners, I think Taiwan is like top 5 of China's trading partners, and the other I'll look it up and I'll post it here. But we certainly have not cut China out. We just haven't. I mean, we trade with China, and I would argue that we haven't cut China out, but we should diversify our economy more so that we are less dependent on autocratic countries. It would just make more sense security wise to have your economy be less dependent on autocratic countries, as opposed to being more dependent on autocratic countries, be more invested in countries you share principles and values with, on countries that are more democratic, because it's just more effective, more efficient, more respectful.
不要完全把中国切割，因为这是对整个台湾不管经济还是世界经济上都会有一些损失吧。就是你偏要以对立的角度来讲的话，势必会造成一些牺牲。但我觉得只要可以好好沟通的话，就是对，只要可以好好沟通的话，那我认为是还是可以与中国合作。
We have been working with China.
但是我目前的想法是，可能现况是以美国为主。
所以您觉得应该要跟美国更密切的合作，那是为什么？为什么？就是因为他们对我们比较友好。
Yeah, it's the same analogy that I said with the Taiwanese girl analogy. I mean, watch me just call this analogy the Taiwanese girl analogy from now on. The Taiwanese girl is going to choose the guy that is more respectful to her. That's just what that is. One wants to have a consensual relationship. The other wants to be forceful and abusive. That's just what that is.
然后在美国的话也算是世界强国，对，所以就是我觉得对我们来说是算是有经济上的益处。
I'm pretty sure that we are actually, I think, much more dependent on China economically than on the United States. Pretty sure. I'll look that up, but I'm pretty sure, and that's a problem.
那坏处呢？
坏处跟美国嘛，这国际好像有点尴尬的对立关系，就是好像是我们一定要选边嘛，那这就是坏处啊，因为我们一定会得罪另一边。
Oh yeah, well, it's funny. It's funny for her to say that. Yeah, the con is that one particular side that is sensitive gets offended, and because they are an authoritarian autocracy, they inflict damage when they feel offended.
好处跟坏处嘛，好处就是台湾的主体性是不会被侵犯的，再来台湾在国际的地位上会是。
I don't know if this part is true. Is a pro working with the United States, would that make Taiwan's international status more distinct? I mean, it is because unofficially, and unofficially really is this like invisible thing, but unofficially they kind of support Taiwan, but they don't have, because of the stupid idea that I don't agree with, that there should be and can only be one China. They had to choose the ROC or the PRC, the Republic of China or the People's Republic of China. And so that led to us not having that official diplomatic relationship. I guess I could just say that the countries that we do have an official diplomatic relationship with, if they were bigger global and international powers, that would make this statement more true with those countries. But that's sort of just the situation right now.
比较凸显的，因为简单来说，如果你不亲美国，就是亲中，那
Yeah, and if you, I guess, favor China, they're not going to respect you and your sovereignty. They're going to swallow you up and annex you. If you favor China, then China basically doesn't consider your country just a region. Exactly, right? So
比较亲中的话，你根本中国也不认为你是个国家，认为你是个地区。那如果你这一直在国际上表达你只是一个地区的这种感觉给大家啊，你根本不会在国际上，人家根本不会有地位，因为你自己都没有自己认同。
跟美国的话，就经济方面对台湾帮助会比较大。毕竟因为世界，比如说台湾要跟韩国竞争，在世界舞台也是靠电子业。那电子业这相关科技还是由美国跟日本合作，这方面的先进科技对台湾来讲是帮助比较大。
那有没有什么坏处呢？
坏处的话就是会当成政治上的筹码就是说
Yeah, you really have to weigh the pros and cons with favoring the US and the pros and cons favoring the PRC. And personally, my biased opinion, I certainly don't think that the pros being more close with an autocratic, authoritarian PRC outweigh the pros of being with a democratic, country. And I think the cons of being swallowed up and annexed by an authoritarian autocratic PRC completely outweigh whatever cons might exist working with the United States.
台湾跟中国如果交恶，万一不小心像中国大陆的飞机一直在台湾南边飞来飞去，万一不小心擦枪走火的话，那受伤的也是台湾，这是政治上的坏处。
我觉得应该偏向美方吧，因为现在执政党的色彩比较跟中国。
Because the current party is in opposition to China. Does he mean the current party in Taiwan or the current party in the United States? The current party in Taiwan is more, willing to stand up to the PRC. But I think both parties in the United States feel that way about China too. So
是可以，可是如果要跟他们做合作或者是什么的话，应该会比较尴尬一点。
我觉得那个香港的那个事件其实有点影响台湾的年轻人的看法，这样，就可能会觉得说，香港当初好像也是选择轻松，结果后来他们说好几年都不会改或者怎么样之类，就怎么现在变成这种感觉？
那你们有想要向这些美国民众传达什么样的讯息？
一些国外的朋友强调说，就是我们跟大陆是不同的国家的，对，所以就希望他们可以来看。
Taiwan, the country that invented boba. To anybody that enjoys boba, maybe pay us a visit and visit the inventing country of boba. First, the most democratic country in Asia, the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage, the number 1 country in Asia in gender equality, number 1 country in the world for expats, rated in 2021. Pay us a visit, you'll love it. For tourism, I think it's like a cross of Japan, China, Hawaii, Thailand. That's sort of my quick description there.
他是建议美国，就是说能够和平处理世界关系，就尽量和平处理世界关系，那不要用一些武器或用一些威吓去处理世界关系这样子。
我觉得可以，如果是人民的话，我就觉得对于台湾可以更多了解一点，因为我们一直都怎么讲，就是对他们来说，虽然平常不会感觉，但其实是很重要的。我觉得在未来，我们对于
He didn't say that I think we're really important. He said this is important. It is important. So yeah, Asian boss really needs to get their translations more precise.
就是对他们来说，虽然平常不会感觉，但其实是很重要的。我觉得在未来，我们对于我们在这边的区域的这个重要性会越来越重，我是觉得可以多了解一点，这样台湾人民就是很好很 nice 这样子。
Alrighty, I think this video was better than the one that they did here. I think it's a little more neutral, and what you would expect if you more than this one anyway, if you actually just went to the street and asked people what they think. I hope that's what they did here. I hope they genuinely just picked random people off the street and not specifically look for specific opinions that they want to broadcast, because that's not unbiased, that's not neutral like they purport themselves to be. Because again, the issue with that last one was that they specifically looked for somebody that held certain leanings, but they didn't do the equivalent opposition for the other side. That was the problem that I had. I mean, it wasn't organic. It was more artificial. So I hope that they do more of that, or at least be more aware of the actual overwhelming majority of opinions that are polled. And I guess I can post that up here. I would be curious to know, and first of all, I think that it is true that if you look at Asian Boss's channel, the flag that they put up is going to be the country that they discuss, but it can be a little misleading when they have like the Chinese flag and about the Taiwanese, and that kind of makes it look like, the Taiwanese are a part of that flag, which is not true. But, if you look at this thumbnail, it's like, what do the Chinese here think about Russia? I'm curious if they will ever have a video where they have the flag of Taiwan, which is the flag of the Republic of China. Some people don't like to call that the flag of Taiwan or the Taiwanese flag because the local Taiwanese people are against the Republic of China. But anyway, the flag that is the country that governs Taiwan today. I would be curious to know if they ever do a video of what do the Chinese think of Taiwan and the Taiwanese, with that flag, because our flag doesn't get obviously as much attention as this flag. Or that flag. If they did that video, they are generally all raised in the same sort of doctrine when it comes to Taiwan. You won't get as much of a diverse set of opinions as you did in this video, or just how Taiwan is. Like I said before, Taiwan, even though it's like this small island with only 23 million people, is more divided in their beliefs and political leanings than people in China, because in China they only have one party and they're all sort of indoctrinated and taught that Taiwan is a part part of them and that they need to claim it back, even though if you need to claim it back, it's not a part of you. You know, it's like, so if they did that video in China, I would suspect that the overwhelming opinion is that we need to take Taiwan, but we want to do it with peaceful means. But the problem is you're not entitled to another country's sovereignty when they are a sovereign country. Anyway, this video, the raw footage is 1 hour and 16 minutes. It's a little later, so maybe I'm a little slower today. I'm talking slow, and maybe that's why that's so long. So I hope I said what I need to say here. Would love to know what you guys think in the comments. You know, let me know if you guys have any questions. I asked you guys a couple of questions throughout the video, so yeah, let me know what you guys think. Oh yeah, they said they're filming another video asking the local Taiwanese people about what they think about the Ukraine-Russia situation. And, you know, one of the questions that they're probably going to ask is, oh, seeing how the United States has responded to Ukraine, does that change your confidence in what the United States would do in case of a Chinese invasion? That's probably going to be a question that they're going to be asked. I just read today that there was a Taiwanese person that volunteered to go to Ukraine and fight for them. So that's cool. But yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys in the comments. Keep in touch and keep the discussion going. Oh, and I'll leave some links for you guys to help Ukraine if you guys are interested. And of course, my words aren't going to be able to do anything for the people on the ground in Ukraine, but I hope that Russia just stops what they're doing and they can end the war today. You know, last thing I'll say is if Russia stops fighting, there will be no more war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no more Ukraine. The same thing with Taiwan. If China stops its entitlement towards Taiwan, there will be no tension. But if Taiwan doesn't fight for itself, there will be no more Taiwan. So, all right. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all constantly thinking about Ukraine, but as we all know, thoughts and prayers, you know, don't really do anything. So yeah, again, I'll leave those links down below if you want to donate. Take care, everybody. Peace.